What was the internet like before Facebook? You know, back when people were cool and the government wasn't spying on your every move? Well, one of the dominant internet platforms at the time was Myspace, which launched in 2003 and hit its peak around 2006. It was basically the Facebook of its day, except with way more customization and freedom and creativity, and also a lot more racism. If you're too young to remember Myspace, just picture Facebook, but worse in every single way, except for maybe the number of users. In fact, by 2006, Myspace had over 100 million users and was even more popular than Google. So what did Myspace look like? Well, let's take a look at this Time magazine cover from February 2006, which features a guy named Tom Anderson, who was basically the Mark Zuckerberg of Myspace. The article begins. You can call him the anti-Zuckerberg, the friendly, approachable CEO who doesn't pitch his site as a must-have tool, but as a fun place to hang out. Fun place to hang out. That kind of sounds like Facebook. But then things get weird. The article continues. His site has 48 million members, many of them teenagers. But unlike the famously reclusive Zuckerberg, Anderson is 42 years old. He drinks red wine and talks openly about the need to make money. Wait, so he's old, and he drinks red wine, and he talks about making money. So he's basically Elon Musk. But then things get even weirder, because here's a quote from Tom Anderson himself. I love hanging out with my friends and my kids. I mean, come on. I have a wife and 2 kids, and I love them both dearly. And yeah, I love hanging out with my friends too. This can't possibly end well. Anyway, Myspace did eventually get bought out by News Corporation for $580 million in 2005. And by 2009, it was a dying platform. Here are some quotes from a 2009 Time magazine article about the decline of Myspace. To some, the site has become synonymous with all that is wrong with the internet. A place where cyberbullies run rampant and personal information is routinely hijacked. Teenagers say it's lame. Web gurus say it's clunky. Privacy advocates say it's a nightmare. Advertisers say it's cheap. Sounds familiar? One of the main reasons that Myspace fell behind Facebook was that it was too busy trying to reinvent itself. First, they tried to reinvent themselves as a music destination. Then they added a news feed. Then they started experimenting with video. Then they hired away Facebook's chief technology officer, and then they made a terrible mobile app. But perhaps the most important reason that Myspace failed was that it simply could uncompete with Facebook's superior algorithms. What does that mean, exactly? Well, basically, Facebook was better at showing people the content that they wanted to see. More specifically, Facebook used something called the EdgeRank algorithm, which determined which stories got pushed onto users' news feeds, and the algorithm was constantly evolving and improving. Meanwhile, Myspace didn't really have an algorithm. Instead, they just showed people random crap and then hoped that they would stick around long enough to see an ad. In fact, here's a quote from Owen Van Natta, who was Myspace's vice president of media and entertainment. We didn't have an algorithm telling us what people wanted to see. We had humans doing it. And now we've taken out the humans. We've automated it. And it has been brutal because what that means is only the best stuff rises to the top. So who invented the algorithm? Well, it was actually invented by this guy named Eduardo Severin, who was one of Facebook's early investors. In fact, he was such a brilliant programmer that Mark Zuckerberg asked him to build the algorithm into the very foundation of Facebook. But after they launched, Zuckerberg fired him because he didn't want anyone else controlling the company. And then Severin went on to found this little known app called Instagram, which was basically Facebook, except with pictures and filters. So did you use Myspace back in the day? If so, leave a comment down below and tell me what you miss most about it. I personally miss the freedom. I mean, you could literally customize the background color of your page to be whatever you wanted. You could post whatever you wanted. There was no cancel culture. And people were generally just nicer. In fact, here's a quote from that 2009 Time magazine article. Today's bullying takes place online. A teenager who might think twice about calling another student a name in the schoolyard will gleefully hurl insults across the ether, knowing that the victim, wouldn't be able to fight back. And on Myspace, there is no It's an unpoliced frontier. Anonymity and hormones are a toxic mix. But despite the toxicity, despite the bullying, despite the racism, despite the bad layout and design and user experience, there's still a part of me that misses Myspace. Probably because it reminds me of a time before smartphones. A time when the internet was new and exciting and full of possibility. And before social media was used to control your every move and harvest your data and ruin your privacy. But hey, at least we have self-driving cars now and robot overlords. So I guess progress is progress. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And as always, thanks for watching.